All right, good evening, everyone. How are you doing? Good, thank you very much. I'm Councilmember Will Jawando. I'm the current Vice President of the County Council and Chair of the Education and Culture Committee, which has oversight over MCPS and Montgomery College and our libraries and our arts and cultural organizations. Really good to be with you all today. Thank you for coming out for our third and final budget forum to talk about our great educational system and continuum here in Montgomery County. I want to thank Principal Piles, who I know is somewhere in the back there. Let's give her a big round of applause, the principal of Rockville High School. Thank you for hosting us, as well as all the educators that are here from Rockville and across the system. I've met several of you and everyone else. Thank you, parents, concerned community members. Thank you, students. I met a couple students. Thank you for coming. As I mentioned, this is our third and final stop on the journey. To give you a sense of where we are in place of time and what we're going to do tonight, we're going to hear from the number 10 out of 1,000 ranked community college in the country, Montgomery College. That deserves a round of applause right there. Okay. Dr. Williams to talk about their budget, their priorities, and their commitment to remaining the great community college that they are. Then you're going to hear from Superintendent Dr. Taylor to talk about MCPS's budget and where we are. And then we'll have an opportunity, there's a mic in the middle, for questions. Before I get into the presentations, we're going to be very short so we can get most of the dialogue going back and forth. So you know where we are in the budget process. We'll start with MCPS. The superintendent submitted his budget to the board. They approved a budget. The county executive then submitted his budget recommendation to the county council, which has the ultimate funding authority on the budget. We got that on March 14th, and we will start in earnest next week considering the budget, starting with budget public hearings, and then in the Education and Culture Committee, which I chair, where we will have 4 sessions where we go over basically all the topics that MCPS covers, and at the end, we will make a funding recommendation of a funding level to the full council, which will then consider that, and we will pass a final budget number for the school system, also for the college, and for the entire $7.7 billion budget that we have here in Montgomery County. And then the school system, my hope, I've not been shy about this, my hope is that we will fund the school system's budget. And so I hope that's my plan. But I am one of 11 council members. And so we're going to work through that process. But whatever funding level we meet for the school system and the college, they will then meet with their respective boards and decide how to spend that money if it's less than what was asked for. So hopefully it's not, but that's how the process works, just so you know. So tonight you're going to hear an overview of the budgets. Then we want to hear from you about questions, concerns, things that you think are going well that we need more of, and everything in between. I want to mention just property taxes briefly, because this is connected to most of our funding for schools comes from us here in the county. Now, there obviously are, Superintendent Taylor will talk about this, as will Dr. Williams. There is money that comes from the federal government that we rely on and that we need, but the vast majority of the funding comes from us locally, because it's our school system, it's our community college. We're one of the largest school systems in the country, 14 or 15, depending on the year, of the entire country, 160,000 students, just under 211 schools, 45,000, I knew it was a little off, 45,000 students at the community college. And so we're serving a lot of kids and a lot of students. But we need to, because we need to make sure they have the skills they need to thrive. And so property taxes is a main vehicle. The county executive recommended a property tax increase of 3.5%, 3.5 cents on the dollar. What that would mean in real terms would depend on the price and the value of your home. We know assessments are up. We know costs of everything are up. So it's one of the things we're weighing. How do we balance that? The other thing he recommended, which I think was a good thing, is he recommended an increase in the property tax rebate that you get, called the income tax offset credit. It'll go up to $860 if we pass it as he recommended, which again is up in the air, but that's what he recommended. And what that would mean is that anyone with a $500,000 or less home would not see any property tax increase. And then if you were lower than that, if you had a home that cost $400,000, you'd actually get a credit, a rebate back. And that would be with the 3.5% increase. So it's a progressive way to make the property tax a little more progressive. Last thing I'll say, our friends in Annapolis are right now deliberating on their budget, and they are going to shift some liability to us. If you're an educator in the room, raise your hand, please. I know I see some, okay? We've made a commitment to you that because you've taken care of us and our students, that when you retire, we're going to pay your pension, right? And it had been a 60-40 split between the state and us, with us paying 60, the state paying 40. They're going to shift some of that liability to us in the tune of probably $21 million. So we're going to have to fund that. That was not included in the budget. So there's a lot of things, moving pieces in Annapolis. We'll know those numbers hopefully in the next few weeks, and it's just stuff we have to deal. So I just want you to understand a lot of this is a moving train, but you have my commitment. You have the commitment of, I know, Dr. Taylor and Dr. Williams, that we want to make sure our kids and our families have what they need. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to first Dr. Williams, and just a note about ASL and Spanish interpretation. If anyone we have ASL interpretation here, thank you so much. And in the back, if you need Spanish interpretation, there's a table where you can, there you go, where you can get that. With that, Dr. Williams.
Thank you. Thank you. The volume is okay? All right. Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well, all things considered. Appreciate the response. For those, thank you, Council Vice President Jawando, for not just for leading this conversation and all of these forums, but for what you do day in and day out for all the residents of Montgomery County and beyond. Truly, you're looking to really create social transformation with your actions, and I'm deeply appreciative of everything you do for the residents of Montgomery County and beyond. And it is an absolute pleasure to be here with Dr. Taylor and the MCPS families. And I want to give, of course, a shout out to any Montgomery College faculty, staff, students, alumni. I see you, Ezra. How many people have attended Montgomery College for anything, class, social? All right. How many people know someone who has attended Montgomery College? All right, I think we pretty much have everybody in the room. So to kind of think about the budget for Montgomery College is really to know and to embrace Montgomery College. And as nice. So as we think about this situation, we are your community's college, right? We are the community's college on the precipice of 80 years old, founded in Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. How many people knew that little factoid? All right, Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. And now, where are we? You heard Vice President Jawando share. You can hopefully see the screens. We're serving more than 45,000 students. We are Maryland's largest community colleges. We are one of the best community colleges in the country and #1 in Maryland by a number of markers. We are located across the county where you need us. And if anybody is taking pictures of this deck, just email me. And I'll get it to you. You don't need to furiously type or take pictures. I'll make sure you have it. It's a short slide deck. We are extremely diverse, and we represent the beautiful county that we serve. Just a few things. Our students represent 157 countries. 50% of them identify as first-generation college students. We are proud to be a minority-serving institution with about 30% of our students identifying as Hispanic or Latino, about 1 in 4 of our students identifying as African American or Black, about more than 1 in 5 of our students are Pell recipients, which means they, in terms of socioeconomic status and annual income, they are able to receive federal funds to help support their education, right? So extremely diverse. Where you need us is, Montgomery College. When we think about our aspirations at Montgomery College, we talk a lot about access, completion, and post-completion success. And while I could do a whole presentation on this, it'll be brief. It'll be less than 1 minute. And when we think about access, it really is creating a college-going culture. Right? Montgomery College receives students from every single high school in MCPS every year, but we want more students to attend Montgomery College. Right? Absolutely. So when we think about creating a college golden culture, we want to enhance the number of students who are participating in dual enrollment. We want to see that conversion rate go up. We want experiences like the one that we had a few days ago called the World of Work, an MC experience where we hosted more than 5,000 eighth graders thanks to Dr. Taylor's great team and WorkSource Montgomery at our campuses to learn about post-secondary education, right? To kind of inculcate that idea within everyone in our county. When we think about completion, we think about credentials that have economic, social, and community impact, because we want our students to leave being able to earn a family-sustaining wage. Simultaneously, we want them to be actively engaged in their communities. There's that community and societal impact, and that post-completion success, that third pillar, that third aspiration that really speaks to individual economic and social mobility, upward individual economic and social mobility for all students that transcends and portends intergenerational mobility. So those are the things we think about. When we think about access, as I said, we're where you need us. Rockville, Tacoma Park, Silver Spring, Germantown, and our new facility at the East County Education Center. We think about state-of-the-art classrooms and labs that advance meaningful teaching and learning opportunities for all of our students. This beautiful 55,000 square foot standalone facility just turned 1 year old, not joking, not an embellishment, April 1st. Everybody thought it was an April Fool's joke. We had the opening last year. We are a year old. We are toddling around, but it's so much more in a way of we thought that we would serve, based on a feasibility study, 1,000 individuals in our first year. And I'm proud to share that we have served more than 1,500 individuals in this first year at East County Education Center. And this is thanks to leaders like Vice President Jawando. When we think about access to meaningful credentials, we think about, I have a little one, so I keep my, and it's so cute. Thank you for coming out. I love it. We think about, in terms of, biotech associates. We think about our nurses. We think about our cyber tech individuals. We think about engineers, automotive technicians, right? These are the credentials that fuel our economy and deliver family-sustaining wages, right? And the college is constantly monitoring the landscape. Right, through our business leaders, through WorkSource Montgomery, through data analytics, what does our county need in order to fuel its workforce for economic development, workforce development, and community development, right? They're all infused, they're all together. So that's why our deep partnerships are meaningful. And what do our deep partnerships lead to, right? Why is all this important, right? You'll see this next slide. I'm not going to read it, but it's what happens at Montgomery College. It's the alumni, right? The alumni who are fueling the economy with talent. And you can see just a few examples. These individuals, they live here. They work here, right? They are providing for the present and the future, right, of our county. And when we think about the present and the future, and I'm always, again, being here with Dr. Taylor, and he knows this, and this is a point of pride, I think, for all of us, including Vice President Jawando, that Montgomery College credential can be awarded prior to graduating high school. We have one of the most awesome dual enrollment programs that you'll ever see, where we're graduating hundreds of MCPS students a few weeks before they receive their high school diploma. And individuals are graduating with credentials in IT and cyber techs and biotech associates. They are either going directly into the workforce or able to start their transfer opportunity as a junior. And that's through this beautiful educational ecosystem that we have, and that leaders like Vice President Jawando support through the budget process and ensuring that we can have these awesome opportunities. So as I wrap up, and as promise we won't be long, how does this all contextualize? This is a budget forum. You haven't said anything about dollars and cents, but it's really important to understand the totality of what I shared, because our budget is our fiscal plan to achieve everything that has just been shared with you in a very brief overview. So what does our budget mean this year? And I can talk about numbers, but I was going to kind of high level. Our budget is one of fiscal prudence. We are not requesting any new dollars from the county, right? It's what we call a maintenance of effort budget. Our budget keeps post-secondary education affordable. So our budget ensures that there are no tuition increases, right? Which is fantastic during these times. And our budget is providing for the compensation that our excellent faculty and staff need and deserve in order to ensure that they can help students identify their goals and help them achieve their goals. So that is on the operating side. And for a little kind of nuts and bolts pieces, our entire budget is actually appropriated through the county council. And we are in a great position because the county council actually provides roughly 50% in FY26 percent of our operating budget, which if you look across the state and across the country, you will just immediately see the dedication that Montgomery County puts forward to supporting its community college, because that is unheard of. In terms of when we think about our capital budget, so those the operating, the capital budget, it seeks to maximize existing resources as well. Some key priorities for us here are our theater arts building, our Germantown Student Services Center, a full-service East County campus, which is crucial. So those are some highlights there. I'll close just by sharing this wonderful, fantastic photo of the Catherine and Isaiah Leggett Math and Science Building, a very new addition to Tacoma Park, Silver Spring. This ribbon cutting, this picture is from last fall. And it is obviously, it's clear here, the number of people who actually it took to create this, that's not present. All those individuals not present. However, you can get from the picture that it takes so many individuals and so much support, again, from leaders like Vice President Jawando and more, to make sure that equitable access to high-level academics at an affordable price are within reach via Montgomery College, regardless of your zip code. This is a 100,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility that has labs and classrooms that are educating and training our residents in terms of cyber, in terms of biolabs. So when you think about the totality of Montgomery College and how we play a role in the ecosystem, just know, again, as I started, I will end the same way, that we are the community's college, and we are here to continue to be the community's college. We are based on our tradition around diversity, equity, inclusion, and that is also our trajectory, maintaining that, and our commitment to moving our county forward. So together, our students will be able to change the world as they have been and as they will continue to be. And I immensely look forward to our shared work. I'm thankful again to the partnership and the support day in and day out that Council Member Vice President Jawando provides, and to the partnership that Dr. Taylor and I have and our team. So on that note, I know we'll have Q&A, but that concludes my brief remarks. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Dr. Taylor.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to stand so that I can see faces and see folks. I just want to say what a privilege it is to share space with you and to share some time with you. I know that you're giving up the dinner hour to be with us tonight, which should be a reflection of how important this topic is, that you would take time out of your schedule to be with us and to give some feedback. So I'm going to hustle through my remarks as quickly as I can, although I am going to get very detailed and actually dive into some numbers and talk about some concrete things. But I want to get to the place where you're asking questions and you're giving feedback, because this is a really important part of the process. This is a part where Vice President Jawando can talk about the public's feedback, when he speaks with his council member counterparts and talk about the questions that you asked and provide some of that context when they're making this very important decision about what to fund and what not to fund. To that point, it is a privilege to share this space with these two gentlemen as well. Vice President Jawando's unwavering commitment to the school system and to education in this community has meant the world to us and certainly has lifted us up because these are really difficult times. And we're going to touch on some of those difficult times and how they have an influence in this budget process. And I will say what a treat it is to have a community college that is in the top 1% of community colleges in the nation. The really bad news that I have to follow up with that is that the school system that is the input to that top 1% of community colleges in the country is not in the top 1%. That we have some really critical issues that we need to confront and that we need to address as a community family together. I'm hoping to illuminate some of those issues, to point them out, and to also offer some suggested solutions on how we might get out of the situation we're in and be a better reflection of Montgomery College's status in the world. And with that, I'm here to talk a little bit about our landscape overall, our capital improvements budget, which is not really the topic du jour today, but it's important to elevate that topic because it is a big piece of the financial conversation, although less of a piece this year, and I'll explain why. I want to share a little bit about our strategy, and then I actually want to talk about real numbers that are in the budget and what our ask entails and why we're asking for what we're asking for specifically. So with that, despite the fact that we are not the best school system in America, but yet we've got the best of community colleges in the community, Montgomery County is a great place to live, work, and learn. We do have some phenomenal schools. We do have a great community that supports public education. But there are some places that are lagging. There are some things that need attention, and I want to illuminate a couple things that are really important. Of the top 20 high schools in Maryland, 8 of them are in Montgomery County. Of the top 20 middle schools in Maryland, 6 of them are in Montgomery County. And of the top 20 elementary schools in Maryland, 11 of them are in Montgomery County. That's great. Although I don't think that the U.S. Department of Education Blue Ribbon School Program will exist in the future, we have 45 of them. That's pretty amazing. That's something to be very proud of, that we have the nation's top honor in terms of school recognition because of how high-performing some of our schools are. That really is special. Something that is a little troubling. We have a lot of Title I schools. These are schools that have some federal support for students who are living in poverty and need additional assistance and need additional support. And of our Title I schools, of which we have many, only a couple of them have received national distinction. So what that tells me is that the distance between our highest performing schools and the distance between our schools that need a lot of support is actually pretty wide. And so we need to look at how we might support our schools that need a little extra support a little bit differently. We have a growing number of nationally board certified teachers. This is a phenomenal professional development. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is definitely a reflection of a commitment of our workforce to try and elevate the teaching field. I'd love to see this number grow. It's really encouraging that we have so many, but this is a number that we definitely would love to see grow, and this will also be something that you hear about in the blueprint for Maryland's future. I've heard an awful lot, and having grown up in Montgomery County, I heard an awful lot about this 30 years ago too, about how Montgomery County has changed. And I think what they're talking about is how Montgomery County has changed demographically. The reality is Montgomery County hasn't really changed a whole lot in the last couple decades. We have always been a very diverse community, or at least we have been for the last couple decades. But there have been some significant changes. And I want to point out a couple of those really significant changes because they are very present in this budget presentation. One of the most significant changes is that not that long ago, we communicated with one another through very different means. The children going through school today have never known a world without these. But their parents do. This is a very different dynamic. How we utilize technology is also very different. How we utilize technology in the schoolhouse is very different. These things do have an impact, but not nearly as big of an impact as other changes in the demographics of our school system. We have more students who are learning the English language in our school system than ever before, and this number continues to grow. As a matter of fact, it is our fastest growing student population is our emergent multilingual learners. These students need additional support. They need additional resources. This is something that needs to be better reflected in our budget as we're differentiating to meet the needs of our learners. Our students with disabilities. This is another big group of students that continues to grow and grow at a very rapid rate. Our students with disabilities need a lot of support. And I'm going to be completely candid with you and tell you that we have not done really well with this. As a matter of fact, this has been something that has been a bit of a dismal failure for us. And serving the needs of our emergent multilingual learners and our students with disabilities is severely lacking and needs a lot of support to correct. It's kind of one of those things that we've been a little asleep at the wheel, and we haven't been paying as close of attention to this as we've needed to over the last several years, and now we're at a crisis. Another big factor. Since the pandemic, something else has happened to our student population. We have more students who are accessing the federal free lunch program than ever before. As a matter of fact, nearly half of our students are accessing our federal free lunch program, and our students need a lot of support. And if you're accessing our federal free lunch program, the likelihood that you need more than just lunch to make school work is a reality. This is a big shift for Montgomery County because the outward perception of our friends in other places like Annapolis or in other parts of the state is that they have one perception of what Montgomery County is like, and this paints a very different picture of what Montgomery County is like and what Montgomery County's needs are. This also needs to be better reflected in our budget and our spending priorities. I will say an alarming statistic that some of you will totally get and totally appreciate and totally understand, and then many of you will say, huh, is that true? We have more students who access the federal free lunch program than the District of Columbia has students. So we have more students living in poverty than DC has students total. We have needs, and we need a lot of support for sure in this community. Something I'm not particularly proud of is our performance of late. It's all over the place. Depending on a whole host of factors, where our students are going to school, some of their backgrounds, some of their supports that they've gotten, their performance is all over the place, and what it shakes out is that about half of our students are performing well on state literacy assessments. That's terrible. But not nearly as terrible as only a third of our students performing well on math assessments. I'm going to say that, Dr. Williams, this is not worthy of having a great community college in our community, that we could do a much better job of preparing our kids to be successful in Montgomery College classrooms. This needs a lot of attention. And when we're adding to the list of things that are a crisis, this is definitely a crisis and something that we should be concerned about. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about our capital improvements plan, because that's really the overarching landscape of kind of where MCPS is today. There are bright spots that we can be very proud of and things that we can be very happy with, and then there are other aspects that we need to be very, very, very concerned about. This year, as a part of this budget process, we have the things that make our operations work, our operating budget, and then we also have a totally separate budget that's connected, which is our capital improvements budget. This is quite literally the buildings that our schools are in, the campuses that we maintain, some of the materials and supplies in terms of technology. Those are items that end up in our capital improvements plan. And this is a budget that is on a 2-year cycle where it is reviewed in earnest every other year, not necessarily every year. For a project list, we are actually undergoing a very comprehensive review of all of our facilities so that we might better rank our facilities in terms of their condition to reassess this for the next upcoming budget cycle. This year is what is considered an off year. So it's not really a year where we would add a bunch of projects to the list or a year that we would reevaluate all of our existing projects, but rather how do we complete the projects that are already scheduled for completion. And I'm very proud to say without adding to the total bottom line, which is a good goal to have because it hasn't happened for quite some time, MCPS put forward a capital improvements budget that maintained that bottom line. Now, we had to confront a couple of issues with state financing, and we did that. And I'm proud to say that we're keeping the train moving on some of our big projects, our Woodward High School project, our Crown High School project. All of those are moving forward as planned. This is pretty unsensational, but in future years when we have big conversations about budget, this is going to feature very prominently because as beautiful and as well-maintained as Rockville High School is, this is not the typical school building in Montgomery County Public Schools. Many of our school buildings are actually in pretty rough shape. And as nice as a school building might look even on the surface and as beautiful as even Rockville High School is, sometimes our school buildings tell a different story behind the walls. Whether it's the plumbing or whether it's the HVAC or whether it's the electrical, these are some of the things that we need to be a little bit more attentive to nowadays because we really haven't been paying attention to them the way that we should have been paying attention to them in recent years. So with that, I want to tell you a little bit about our strategy because we've got some challenges that we need to address, and I want to tell you about a little bit behind the curtain about how we might go about addressing some of those challenges. And my approach is really just 7 points of how we might focus on our fundamentals. And a copy of this presentation, along with a copy of all of our budget documents, can be found on the MCPS website, montgomerycountyschools.org, or montgomerycountyschools.md.org. And if you type into the search bar budget, you'll get a copy of this presentation. You'll get a copy of other budget presentations. You'll even see budget videos. If you just love the sound of my voice and want to talk about numbers all the time, you can see all of that on YouTube in great detail. And you can even go through the spreadsheets that we have. One of the things I'm proud about in this particular budget cycle is that we put forward budget documents where folks can click on and drill down to numbers of origin so that you can kind of see how we came up with the numbers that we came up with. I think that that's really important for transparency's sake. So don't feel like you got to take screenshots of this sort of thing. We've got all of these things in a public place that you can find. Our strategy really revolves around making a few really consequential changes to how we set expectations. And this is really at the policy level in terms of revising some things like our grading policy, our attendance policy, and setting the framework so that everybody can really do their best work and that teachers can have some flexibility to teach because doing what they do best actually works. Which brings us to our number 2 strategy, the team that we have. I get often asked, what would make our school system a safer place? And I've got a really important, easy, and true answer for you. A certified teacher in every classroom would make our schools safer. Somebody who is there consistently, who has built a relationship with children, and is there and committed to the school community makes our schools a safer place, but it also makes the learning environment a better place. So making sure that we recruit and retain really qualified, great people like we already have in MCPS, we got to hang on to them because they're pretty important, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the numbers. Making sure that our schools are safe places, both physically and emotionally for our kids to learn and for our adults to work is really important. I'm very fond of telling my staff that it is impossible for us to be the best at everything, although we try. There's more than 1,000 school systems in America. There's actually 13,000 school systems in America, and I'd love for us to be the best school system in America, or at least in the top 1%, so that we could match up with Montgomery College. But the reality is I want my team to be the best at getting better and to have a continuous improvement mindset and really to try to work to become better every day. So we're shifting some of our approach to in the central office about how we support schools. I'll touch on that a little bit, and pushing some of our supports more directly to schools with a little bit more intentionality and a little bit more purpose. We've got a couple of proposals in this budget to differentiate our resources a little bit better, to better align with school needs. And then finally, I am embarrassed to tell you that this has to be a priority for us, but we need to be a little bit better in terms of how we spend our money and a little bit wiser about the return on investment that we get from spending our money, because we've made some mistakes recently. And we need to own those mistakes, and we need to confront those things in a very intentional and deliberate way so that we don't repeat those mistakes and that we create the kind of internal controls that establish some trust back in the community about your school system. So with that, I want to jump right in and talk about the money. Before I talk about the money, I want to talk about vegetables. I'm not a particularly big fan of broccoli. I'm more of an asparagus guy myself. When I eat vegetables, if I had to pick a vegetable, this would probably be very low on the list, not very high on the list, which is why I picked it as kind of the icon for this particular budget. This is not a budget of a lot of innovation. This is not a budget where we're adding a bunch of programs or doing a bunch of new things. It's actually quite the opposite. We are trying to fill some holes. I would love to tell you that this budget is going to solve all of our problems and everything will be fine, and next year this will be a very smooth process. I'm going to tell you that quite the opposite is true, that this is a budget that begins to solve problems, that it begins to address problems, but it does not actually solve anything, but it really does move us in the right direction. Solving our problems would be a request that I really don't think anyone could really stand right now, because we are really so far behind in so many areas. It's really disappointing. Our budget is broken up into 5 sections when you look at our budget documents. The first section is revenue. We'll talk very briefly about that. The second section is a new section in our budget, which is changes to our base budget. Yes, I did actually take things out. The next section of our budget is an area called non-discretionary requirements. These are things that I cannot change. These are laws in the state of Maryland. They are regulations that our Board of Education and policies that our Board of Education have adopted, or they are contracts that we've committed to, and therefore either by statute, by regulation, by policy, or law, we are committed to fulfilling that responsibility. The fourth section of our budget has to do with Maryland's blueprint for the future. Can't wait to talk about that one. And the last section of our budget is the discretionary section. This is the stuff where we've got lots of choice and lots of area to discuss and a little bit of wiggle room. But these are ideas where we think we can really elevate the school system by making different choices. So I'm going to jump right in. Very briefly, this slide is probably the most outdated of any because of 2 things. The county executive has proposed his budget. It looks nothing like this. And our state legislators haven't decided on what the state number looks like. Whichever of those things happens first, our county council acts or our state acts, some of this will start to get firmed up a little bit. But these are placeholder numbers to reflect kind of where we are in terms of our total need, and it is fairly substantial. The numbers that are reflected here are actually a reflection of the governor's proposed budget, which has pretty much been ripped to shreds by the legislature at this point. So it's not really super valid, but at the same time, we are kind of putting out that number because there was a lot of other expectations that went with it that we want to talk about. So jumping right in to changes to our base budget, there's really only one really significant change to the base budget, is a pretty massive central office reorganization. We've grown pretty significantly in our central office over the last 5 years. It might alarm you to know that we have over 2,600 positions that are tied to our central services. That's great if all of our forces are kind of moving in the same direction and meeting the needs of our schools. We think that we could arrange things a little bit differently and deploy things to schools a little bit differently to get a little bit broader impact. All of our teammates have value. All of our teammates have purpose. We're just trying to find the right fit where we can make good things happen for schools and communities, which brings us to non-discretionary requirements. This is the stuff that, again, is tied to either law, policy, statute, or a contract. And the biggest thing right here is compensation. Almost 2/3 of our budget is tied to compensation and benefits. There's a really important part tied to compensation in the top line there, which is the contract that we have with our employees. And I want to unpack this for you briefly because it's a pretty important contract. This is requesting an assumption of 3.25% increase in salary plus a step for merit and experience. And what you may notice, and this is a really important part, is that I believe this to be a very reasonable request because it is on par with what county employees have requested from county government and made a similar agreement with county government. That is a very important point to make, that our county employees and our school employees have a lot of similarity between them. Now, of course, the school employees are a lot more expensive because there's a lot more of them, to be completely candid with you. 9 out of every $10 in the school system budget is people. It's compensation and benefits. We are not a school system of things. We are a school system of people. And as Vice President Jawando mentioned at the very beginning of this, you have noticed that prices are going up. Everything is going up. Even eggs, for crying out loud, are going up. Everything costs more. Well, those costs are also borne by the teachers. And so they're experiencing those cost increases too. Our educators, our SEIU employees, our administrators, everybody feels the pain of those costs going up. And so they too also have to feel that burden. Something I'm not particularly happy with or not particularly proud of, but there's a little bit of a ray of hope and a silver lining, is that over the last couple of years, our employee benefits plan has slipped into a deficit. I'm going to tell you right now that this should never have happened, that was bad management, and that this could have been handled a lot better, and it wasn't. But we've identified this as an issue, and we're working to correct it. When we started the budget process, it was a $165 million hole in the budget, almost equivalent to what we were spending on salaries. But I got to tell you that we actually have educators that have a big heart and are willing to sacrifice to make this work. And so all of our educator unions came back to the table and they took a financial hit in their own benefits just so that the school system budget could work. That's a big step. So even though they're asking for a salary increase, which is completely merited, and certainly in this economy is completely merited, they are also sacrificing at the same time by reducing benefits and voting to do so just so that the school system budget can work. That's a big step. They are not asking county council to fill the gap. They're not asking the county executive to make money and make it happen. What they want to do is they want to be participants in solving the problem. And for me, this says a lot about the people that we have working in the school system, and that they care about the community, they care about the taxpayers, they care about what ends up happening in the community, and that they're willing to make sacrifices too. Another hard thing to explain, but it's important to talk about, is this notion or this idea of salary lapse and turnover. And this is an accounting strategy that's been used in the school system budget for the last several years. And it's actually a really effective counting strategy. When you know you're going to have vacancies in a large organization, you're going to realize a savings, because when a vacant position is vacant, you're not spending money on that salary. So where does the money go? Well, it just kind of sits there. And it's a good strategy in the short term that you could take that money that's just sitting there and you could apply it somewhere else. The problem is that's a really good short-term strategy and a really bad long-term strategy. It's not something that financially healthy organizations do. And part of the problem is when you actually fill those positions, you are actually spending the same dollar twice. So we need to kind of go back and fill that hole. And this does not actually get us anything. It doesn't actually solve any problems other than to make us more financially stable. A big issue that you're going to hear an awful lot about is how we serve our students with disabilities and how we meet their needs. And one of the ways that we meet their needs is by having paraprofessionals, who are some of the hardest working people in the entire school system, who step up and work in a support role for classroom teachers. And I got to tell you, our paraprofessionals have a wide range of responsibilities. We took a hard look at these positions and tried to differentiate their compensation based on those responsibilities. Some of our paraprofessionals do a lot of administrative work. Some of our paraprofessionals do literacy tutoring. Some of our paraprofessionals do toileting and medical procedures and feeding tubes. It's a wide range of responsibilities, and it's something that we needed to differentiate compensation for. And so that's reflected in our budget. Which brings us to really the meat and potatoes of this budget. Even though it's not as big as compensation in terms of dollar figure, this is meaningful. How we directly support our students with disabilities and how we support our emergent multilingual learners. I've got a lot of positions programmed into this budget to support these positions, or to support our students in these areas. The really disappointing part is that these positions should have been here all along, because our staffing guidelines actually say that we should have these in place already, except that we've been kind of undercutting the budget in these areas for the last several years, and we've been underfunding these places in the budget, and as a consequence, we are not actually staffing to the level that we say we're supposed to staff at. And so when you talk to a teacher or you talk to a school staff member and they tell you, oh my gosh, special education's a hot mess, I promise you that it is not the special educator's fault. It is that special education program is likely not staffed properly. And so what we're hoping to do, and we're not actually improving class size at all in this budget, which is another huge disappointment, because candidly we can't afford it, is that we are trying to staff to the levels in which we say we staff at. A couple other big issues that I want to touch on, and then I promise I'll speed this along because it's important we get to your comments and questions, is building maintenance. This may be hard to believe, but in the last 20 years, we really haven't improved our maintenance team in any way, shape, or form in terms of numbers, but yet we've added dozens and dozens of schools and millions of square feet. The only thing that's happened in that time, our schools have gotten older and harder to maintain. We need to make some kind of investment in ongoing maintenance. When you hear about things that don't get fixed, like a sink that stops working or a door that has to be taken off the hinges, I'm going to tell you it is not from a lack of love or attention that it doesn't get fixed. It is literally because we are running out of money. It is a scary thing to think about when we start to get to this point in the school year and the weather starts to get a little warmer and the AC gets a little fritzy, and we have to start prioritizing which is the worst one and which is the one that we're going to fix first versus just fixing it. That is our situation right now in Montgomery County. That's not all of the items that are in our non-discretionary list. I just wanted to highlight a few of them. One of the one that's in our non-discretionary list is our utility bill. Any guesses at how much our utility bill is? How much? Too much? 40 million? That's close. It's about 50 million. And get ready for this. our rate is better than your rate. We get a volume discount. So we have a huge utility bill, but we have millions and millions of square feet that we are serving. Our utility bill is projected to go up 8% next year. So if you think about $50 million and an 8% premium on top of that, we're looking at $4 million added to our utility bill for the same service, okay? These are big numbers. They're very real numbers. But when we talk about why the school system budget is as big as it is, this is it. I mean, I would love to bring a budget that asks for no new money. I would love to bring a budget that's tempered by a lot of expectations. But the reality is that the numbers are big because the need is big, and some of these things are really outside of our control. You've probably heard a lot in the news about the blueprint for Maryland's future. So far to date, we think that we've projected around $30 million in blueprint expenditures. Truthfully, it's probably way more than that. That these are the ones that we could clearly identify as blueprint expenditures. Not all of the blueprint expenditures are from the state money. A lot of this is borne by the local expense. If you're wondering what the blueprint is, it's got 5 key pillars. One of the biggest ones has to do with early childhood expansion. I'm going to tell you this is a great investment. It really is. Expanding early childhood services, it really does make a difference. It improves outcomes in the long term and the short term, except it's really expensive. And so us adding 28 classrooms for early childhood, it does meet the requirement that the state has set for us, but it does come at a cost, and it is something that we think about. I mentioned earlier about expanding nationally board certified teachers and educators. This is a great thing to do, but again, it comes at a cost, and so there's a tagline to that too of $1.4 million. College and career readiness. This one is a little bit of a pain point for us in Montgomery County, because though we think that this is a great thing to do to pay for exam fees for AP tests for kids, we don't think that we should pick up the tab for families that can afford it. The state requires us to do that to the tune of $2.1 million in new money. Providing adequate resources for career readiness and for students to be successful, whether this be through tutoring or additional supports, comes at a price tag. It's got a big price tag. But these are things that we're sensitive to. The last section of the budget is our discretionary budget. These are the things that we have complete say over. No one is making us do any of this. These are all choices that we are making and recommendations that me and my team think are good ideas that are going to help support the school system. The first one, actually I'm going to do these in reverse order. The first one is school-based security positions. No one requires us to do this, but we think it's a good idea to have more safety and security in our schools. It is a discretionary expense. It is a choice for us to have safety and security in our schools. We think we should have more of it. We think that this is a step forward. There are several middle schools and elementary schools that we think could be enhanced by having a security footprint. The next one's a kind of a big one. How we have differentiated resources for materials and supplies in the past has we've been basically sending principals a set dollar figure for every number of students that they have in the school, and it's roughly around $100. And basically, if you have 600 kids, we gave you a set amount of dollars, and we said, here you go, make it work. That's the materials and supplies money that you have for the year. The problem is we haven't really touched that number or raised it for inflation in like 20 years. A lot of inflation has happened in 20 years. And truthfully, it's not very differentiated for the students that are in the building. So we came up with a mechanism to differentiate for it. And so I've got a couple of comparison schools, and you can see the whole list in our budget documents, but I think it's worth it for you to know this. You've got Burtonsville Elementary School and Wingate Elementary School that are very similar size. They got about 600 kids a pop, but they're very different schools. Very different schools. One's got twice as many emergent multilingual learners. Another one has twice as many students with disabilities. Another one has 10 times the number of students who are accessing our federal free meals program. That's a big deal. So we think that we should differentiate the resources a little bit and provide more resources to the schools that need it more. This is how we plan to do that. And so I've got a middle school example and a high school example for you there too. All right, I want to close by saying this. There's a whole host of other initiatives that we have in that discretionary pot, everything from expanding our virtual learning footprint to our CREA program. There's a list of things that are noteworthy to talk about, but I do want to make sure that we get to your comments. I have a couple of big commitments that I want to point out. Now, in fairness, there's not really remedial courses at Montgomery College because they're so high performing, but they do have some support networks. But the genesis behind this is that we want to put some weight behind a Montgomery County diploma. And that if you graduate from Montgomery County, we want that to mean something, and that we want you to be set up for success, and that we want to be able to stand behind that and make your diploma mean something. We are not there yet. We have quite a ways to go, which kind of brings us to our second really big commitment that we've made in this budget process, which is that our schools are measured by the Maryland Report Card. And although we do very well in this space, we are far from perfect, and not all of our schools are represented the way that we want them to be represented. Every child who lives in Montgomery County deserves to go to a top-notch school. We think that we can make this a reality. We actually know we can make this a reality. And so we are set out to have 4 or more stars on the Maryland Report Card for every single school in Montgomery County, and we think that we can do that. We have a huge ask. It really is. It's a big ask. We are asking the county to invest in the school system in a really historic and meaningful way, but I got to tell you, the needs are big. And this is not solving our problems. This is not fixing anything directly, but it is absolutely going to put us on a pathway where we can make good on these commitments, and it is going to put us in a position where we will be much better off in terms of meeting our students' needs than we are today, which I'm going to tell you is in a pretty dire state. I really want to thank you for your time and attention. I know that that was a lot of information, and I know that you all have a lot to say and a lot to add to that, and I'll hand it back to Vice President Jawando. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Let's give them both a round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. I did want to mention the capital budget, which was mentioned, is $6 billion for the whole county. So it's everything from roads, schools, resurfacing, all those things, libraries. And then the operating budget is $7.7 billion. So both of those are passed every year. But we considered the capital budget in the off year. I want you to make sure, thank you for bringing that up. Grace Rivera Oven is here, a school board member, so thank you for being here, Grace. Thank you for coming. We can give her a round of applause, yeah. And then I want to just call out a couple people, and then if you have questions, please come up to the mic. You can form a line here. In the back is Michael Solomon from my staff, and Katrina is outside. She checked you in, so please sign in if you didn't. I want to thank them, and I want to thank all the building service workers who helped us be here tonight, as well as all the IT. All right, we have a good line. So we're going to move expeditiously. We're going to be concise with our answers, and so we can get in as many as possible over the next half hour or so. And if you could just say your name and then just keep your comment or question under as close to 30 seconds as possible, but if it's a minute, you got it. Go ahead.
MCPS parent of a junior in high school and a freshman in college now at BCC High School. I'm curious why there's no control over MCPS budget. First, I commend you. I'm so impressed and hopeful at what you're doing to fix problems that you could easily keep putting Band-Aids on and everything you're doing. It's truly remarkable and inspiring, and my kids won't be there to see the benefit of it eventually, but I'm so impressed. Why is there no control over the MCPS budget and how, like for instance, security? If most of the budget is about people and fixing so many important things, special ed, meals, et cetera, why something like security, you can't really say, well, we can defer that, right? Because at BCC, we've got kids leaking into the neighborhood and causing problems. They're causing problems for the whole community, Our Lady of Lourdes private school across the street, et cetera. But shouldn't the county be doing something and saying, we're going to give you X amount of dollars and designate it for security?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do designate in broad funding categories, right? So, but because of state law, the school system has an elected school board. I introduced Ms. Rivera-Oven in the back. They have the authority to decide how to spend the money. That's a state law. So we are preempted from saying you have to spend it in this exact way. Now, we have a strong suggestive power, and we use it. And as chair of the committee, especially over the last few years, we will say, we're giving you this money because we expect you to use it as you've said. And if you don't, they have to come to us every year and ask for money. So there is a relationship, and then all throughout the year, we have oversight hearings. You know, we had one on safety and security, and we talked about BCC and others with Chief Jones, who's now the head of security, and others.
I was there.
Oh, you were there. So we do have the ability to request information, to get things, and we use that to inform the budget process. So while we can't say you must spend this on that dollar because the state doesn't allow us, we do suggest strongly, and we do expect accountability of Dr. Taylor and Dr. Williams. When you say you're asking for this amount of money, we expect to see next year, and as the year goes on, that you've spent it that way. So I think all my colleagues are happy that they are requesting more security professionals as part of the mix, and I suspect that everyone will be strongly supportive of it. But that's the technical reason. The state law provides for the school boards in every county to allocate the exact way they spend the money.
Thank you.
And I'll also add really quick, you may be asking, why does the state require that? And it's really for checks and balances. It is a checks and balances mechanism so that we have a relationship with our funding partner, and it's just like Vice President Jawando said, if we don't hold true to the commitments that we make, our funding request may be dead on arrival in the future because we, lack integrity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yasia Yanevsky. I am a dual enrollment student, so both MCPS and Montgomery College right now. I also have a disability, drug-resistant epilepsy, not fun, which means I cannot attend traditional in-person school safely. I was able to attend the virtual academy until it closed, and now I'm able to finish high school through Montgomery College online program. My question is, how will you keep students like me in mind as you prioritize your budget, and what accessibility and virtual programs will be included?
Well, gosh, if I knew you were coming, I would have put that slide in because it is definitely in our budget to expand our virtual footprint. This is a part of the future, and although you have a robust virtual footprint at Montgomery College, which I know are thrilled with, having the opportunity to have a broader access, and I think that this is an underutilized tool in a couple of different ways in terms of the types of programming that we offer at one school but don't offer at another school. We can expand our virtual footprint that way too. We think that there's a lot of room to grow. We know that there were tough decisions that were made and decisions that changed the way that we did virtual learning a couple of years ago, and we're looking at how we might readjust our expectations in that space. So thank you.
Thank you.
And congrats on dual enrollment. We're all very happy about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jeff Center. Dr. Taylor, good news. Asparagus locally should start in about 3 weeks.
I'm ready.
I suggest to my kids often books to get from the library at schools, and they don't have them. And when they suggest an interlibrary loan, they say they can't do it. And when I suggest the paper they want to look at, there's no way for the schools to get the papers for them. Often I have other resources and give it to them, but lots of parents don't. And it's kind of hard to learn if you can't get the basic materials. Is that something that can be worked on in the future so that these things do exist?
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Center. I think that's the first time I've heard that one, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Joe Shoshati, and before I get to what I had kind of prepared, I just wanted to ask a rhetorical question and make a comment. Is a one-bedroom, $400,000 place that's occupied by one person supposed to be evaluated the same way as a $600,000 place that's occupied by 6 people in terms of whether it's worthy or not for a reduction? I hope that's in there somewhere, and I'm just unfamiliar. The second is. Thank you for the presentation and the detail. Please add in the things that were foregone so that we can see what it should have been, how much more it should have been, and for what. Again, my name is Joe Shishadi. I have students at Sligo Creek and Sims, which are wonderful communities, but as with many of the places, have significant challenges, cramped conditions, construction project, years of ongoing Purple Line stuff, and language immersion programs. I'm part of the SCIT. You're probably familiar with those. Thank you for having those. And the Curriculum Advisory Council for Language. Thank you for having that. The reevaluation that you're doing of baseline capital needs is good. We need to have the same kind of thing for operational needs, and not just along the lines of what you had suggested, but more about programs that are at schools and the differences in the needs that those present. What you spend $100 for in one kind of immersion program gets half in another kind of immersion program, things like that. And we need to get to an equivalence, relative equivalence of experience across the system, which I think you started with, and I think everybody here is kind of like, yes, let's get there. It shouldn't be dependent on your zip code, what your experience is like here. Sourcing of funding, however, is huge. There are a lot of people who want a lot of things, a lot of mouths to feed, not enough to go around. Last month, the county council overrode a veto for expedited bill 2224E, or 2224E includes expedited. That was on capital stuff. Capital impacts operational, as you know, and it's exemplary of an example of the kinds of shenanigans, in a way, that go on with respect to funding for schools. Not a single council member, despite testimony, despite a veto with an explanation, elected to say anything about deferring about $15 million for several years with this bill. I want to ask each of you a question, and I'm sorry for leaving you out because I think it's great that we have you here too. How did the conversation go between MCPS and the county council leading up to that bill for you? And what will you be doing? This is in the past, it's happened. What will you be doing in the future to make sure that that kind of shenanigan where we're like, oh, no, you're going to lose some money and we're not going to talk about it, never happens again? Thanks.
So,
Remind me which bill you're talking about, sir? 22E?
2224E, Evan Glass's bill that it was a,
Oh,
it had a
switching
good purpose.
the
We're
payment
gonna
of impact
delay
taxes.
the collection of
Got it.
impact
Okay.
taxes, right? You know,
Yes.
somebody could have said, hey, wait a minute, no, let's have some geo bonds that fill the interim, and we're supposed to get more later, so let's we'll pay for it later, or something like that.
I appreciate that, yeah.
The school system made it known to council members that we did not support changes to the collection of impact taxes, and as a matter of fact, if anything, our collection of impact taxes is not reflective of the actual impact that it has on school system when there is growth.
Okay, so there was some back and forth before it happened.
Yeah, and
so it's entirely on
Yeah.
your colleagues and you for
Sure.
not doing anything to protect the school system.
Well, I will say on that, I have fought very hard to stop cuts to impact taxes that go to transportation and education. In this instance, it will eventually be revenue neutral because it just changes the time. But I agree with you. Like that's why I'm sitting here saying we have to fully fund the budget, because you can't take the money away when it's needed because you're trying to balance the equity of making sure that housing development is built, which was the argument here. But
it's a good thing that we're aiming for, right?
Right.
But let's not have this terrible side effect.
I understand, and it's a good point.
Just be more responsible about it, please, and pass that on to your colleagues.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I had a daughter go to Sligo too, so go Sligo. Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Katina Constance Sane, and I'm an itinerant resource teacher with the Alternate Learning Outcomes team from Central Office. And I'm here with my two colleagues, if they want to introduce themselves.
Sure, I'm Taylor Hartman. I'm an instructional specialist, same team. Lauren Ashley Minor, instructional specialist on the alternate learning outcomes team as well.
Yes, alternate learning outcomes team, we serve students who have the most significant cognitive disabilities. In particular, our school community-based services, Learning for Independence services, extensions, and Longview and Stephen Knowles. And also Rock Terrace School and Sandburg. Yes, and the Singletons who are in.
All of them.
Yes, all of them. And we're here because central office there's been cuts, as you shared, to central office services or central office personnel. And I am one of the people who've been impacted by that. And I just wanted to share that what we do on the ALO team, even though we serve approximately 1% of the county, that still is approximately 2,000 students, approximately 55 or 65 ALO sites, 23 of which are elementary. At the elementary level, they don't have a program specialist or a program coordinator, so they're out like on an island by themselves, usually requiring support from us. We are in the schools 95% of the week. The only time we're not in schools is when we have our department team meetings or the Department of Special Education meetings. So I had just a question based on what you presented this evening. You said special education classrooms are not staffed properly, which I agree, being in schools every day, supporting SCB and LFI teachers. As I shared, SCB and LFI services lack a program specialist or coordinator in comparison to other services like autism, where they have that multi-tiered level of support. They're often left by themselves to fend for themselves. So how can we ensure student safety in SCB and LFI classrooms when the experts, like myself and my colleagues who work with them, 95% of the school week are being reduced in staffing? The cross-functional team, it's a great idea in theory, but those members lack the necessary expertise in instructional norms, mobility concerns, because these are students who have the complex needs, mobility needs, behavior management, toileting, tube feeding, facilitation of the Appendix A tool. Usually we're called to help facilitate that process to see if a student meets the eligibility for alternate learning standards or the alternate learning framework, and the list goes on and on. There are tons of needs in those services. The ALO team were at the ESY sites for 100% of the time during the 2024 school year, in addition to providing mandatory professional development to teachers who support SCB and LFI classrooms. So my question is, who will support these teachers moving forward? Who will support ESY to ensure student safety and fidelity on the implementation of their IEP goals?
Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for communicating how important this is. And you're absolutely right. And the answer is also in your question, in terms of making sure that we have differentiated roles for different feeder patterns, and that includes our special schools and our schools that have programs. So, you know, our hope is that that expertise is reflected in the teams that are serving that particular cluster or that particular school or that particular team, and sharing the exact expertise that you're talking about. Thanks.
Thank you for everything that you're doing, and
Yep.
appreciate the question and yes, go ahead.
I'm also one of the team members impacted by the cuts. In addition to the other duties that Katina mentioned, we also support private duty nursing, where we case manage the students with the most complex needs medically. And that's a job that requires around the clock, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We're answering emails and phone calls at 10 p.m. at night to make sure that our students have nurses in the morning. With the cuts, who will be overseeing those responsibilities, since our team has been cut and all of those individuals who oversee private duty nursing have been cut?
Well, and I get that it hurts because you're on the downside of an impact, And it's not probably the right way to say that it's a cut, but rather a reallocation of responsibilities within a broader team. So it's reallocating responsibilities. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I have a slightly different question. So I'm on the same team, but I have much less tenure than my teammates here. I was not cut from my team. I have the same job code, and we were trained this past year in anti-racist practices. And if you look at us, I should not be the one who is still on our team. So I want to know the process for who was selected for involuntary transfers, and when that was done incorrectly, what is the process for correcting that? Because OHRD, the union, our supervisors, and the whole Board of Education has completely ignored our several emails, phone calls, and requests for mediation.
I would love to learn more about your specific issue, and to answer your question directly, not knowing those specifics, I can't give you an answer to that.
Was it based on seniority?
I think it's based on just whatever our policy and practices are, so I'm guessing that that is a feature of that. But I also don't know the specifics of your specific situation. So,
Okay, so I guess what is the step?
for us to have a conversation, I'd love to do that.
Okay.
So you mean a conversation not here today, but
Not tonight.
Yeah.
There are a lot of MCPS.
No, we're
gotta
going to
figure
send
that
that.
out.
I know there's
Yeah.
a lot, but
Yeah.
I will send you another email.
No. But what I'm saying is maybe Dr. I'm trying to help. There's a lot of MCPS staff here. Essie McGuire is the chief of staff. Raise your hand, Essie,
Yeah.
please. She talk to her.
She can help
and
you out.
she can help you get a meeting to get your answer. It's a valid question.
Yeah, I
And-
appreciate
yeah.
I appreciate your question. It's a good
Okay,
one.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Paraeducator. We talked at the
I
beginning.
wish I'd written some notes. That's too loud, sorry. I'm at Tilden Middle School, next door to Rock Terrace. We have an Asperger's program. It's not Asperger's, it's autism spectrum. We have an LFI program, Learning for Independence. We have about 1,200 students. We have 14 paraeducators.
Yep.
Bare minimum, we should have 16. For months, we got by with 12. We are constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul, ignoring 504s and IEP students to take care of LFI students who need this help and that help. LFI department is chronically understaffed. On top of that, I teach at least one class a week. I'm teaching regularly. I know all of the curriculums but Spanish and French in the building. We do a lot. I am 56, and I am one of the younger paras in the building. In 10 years, I don't think you're going to have enough paras. We're going to age out of the system. So I'm very encouraged by the grade increases and the step increases. But there's a lot of confusion as to who will be a para level 2 and who will be a para level 3. And I think if you could clarify
Sure.
who's going to qualify to be a 2 or a 3, you would see people who are considering retiring this year or next potentially stay additional years. And that pay increase may also encourage younger people to take up the profession.
Oh, I hope so.
Because
That'd be
right
great.
now, I don't know anybody who's a paraeducator who's in their 30s.
Right.
I know a lot more who are in their 60s and 70s who are just staying with it because they love it. And once they're gone, who's going to come in and replace us? And who's going to have the institutional knowledge to step in to teach a math class today and an English class tomorrow and a history class the next day, which is what we bring, in addition to the toileting and everything else. And I could go on for buildings. I'm the union rep for my building. I could talk about office people, and I could talk about building services people and everybody else. But if you could please clarify for paraeducators, I think it would be very valuable. Thank you very much.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
Michelle Whitaker. I am a parent to a 5th grader at Rockville Elementary. Dr. Williams, really grateful for the work that you're doing at Montgomery College, and a friend of mine, a student who just gave the convocation, I was just really excited about things that he's been doing and how he's just gotten great experiences at the college, so I want to just give you another shout out for that. Related to student federal funding or student aid, is there any concern related to aid with changes that are happening in the federal government and what you're doing to address that. So that's a question for you. And then for Dr. Taylor, as it relates to, I think it came out yesterday from Maryland Matters that $418 we're losing at the state level for funding all of our school systems.
Million.
Or 418
Yeah.
million, thank you. 418 million. I don't know how much that is for the county, but obviously that impacts pandemic-related funding that may have been allocated already to schools and now is no longer available, and the school system won't either get reimbursed or have that funding available for future years.
What an amazing question.
So
Yeah.
just wanted to answer both of that
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
All right,
Dr.
thank you. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for the question. So I will be brief. Things in the federal administration are changing rapidly to understate the situation. At this point in time, April 1st, 7:58 p.m., there is no impact to federal funding for students in regards to any compliance beyond what it is we are already doing and in compliance with right now. However, we stay vigilant. We are consistently watching what is occurring, and we want to keep Montgomery College great for Montgomery County. So,
Great.
thank you.
That's where I'm hoping my daughter will go there as do dual enrollment. So
You know
I'm
what-
already pushing it towards her, even as a fifth
you
grader.
know how to find me.
Wow, what a big announcement. And again, at 7:59, the federal government had communicated on Friday afternoon that Friday evening they were going to stop reimbursements for federal COVID relief ESSER dollars, and this is flow through to the states. So it was something that they communicated just to states.
Yeah.
And so it sent a panic to all of the state superintendents across the country, and of course they forwarded us correspondence. And Maryland looks to be fairly significantly impacted with nearly 400 and some change $million. What we could ascertain of what we have submitted is less than $1.2 million that is outstanding in terms of submissions. So there's a big gap at the state level, and unless Maryland isn't telling us something, which I have to leave the door open for that, because you never know, we actually think that our exposure is relatively small. Doesn't mean that we don't have exposure. I mean, $1.2 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it is reimbursed money because these are things that have already been expended. We submit a reimbursement, we get it reimbursed back to us, but it's in good faith that we submitted it under the terms of a grant that was issued by the federal government. We met the terms of the grant, we should get the reimbursement.
Right.
It's hard to tell with this federal administration what's hyperbole and what's fact, because a lot of times we've also received notifications that they say one thing and then like, no, that's actually not how law works.
Yeah.
Also kind of comes into play. And so we're trying to kind of suss through that. But we think that at this time our exposure is relatively limited unless there's something we don't know. But we were quick to try to figure that out too.
Okay. Great.
So we were just as nervous as everybody else when we heard that, because we're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But we just didn't have a lot outstanding. So that is both good and bad, by the way, that we have spent all of our COVID money and that we've gotten it reimbursed, but that also means that we don't have any and that we definitely have expended those resources pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And relative to the rest of the state, too.
Yeah. Thank you. And Councilmember Jawando, it's good to see you. I guess related to that, there are probably other federally funded programs that are grants that either school-related or county-related that might be impacted in the upcoming budget. Do you all have a sense of that, or is that still being evaluated?
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Michelle. We've asked, we're working with the county executive and all of the agencies, MCPS included, to understand what potential federal grants or streams of income could be at risk. Again, trying to separate hyperbole from what's actually happening. As we said at 8:02 now, we don't, and we're going to end the line there just so my staff's there, but we'll get everyone's question and then we'll wrap up. We are trying to add that up. We don't have a finite list now, and there's nothing that's been taken yet, but we are looking at it.
Okay, Thank you.
And truthfully, the impact to the schools could be significant.
Yes. Food, Medicaid, reimbursements, all that could be coming. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Libby Nealis, and it's good to see you. You just mentioned Medicaid. That's one of the words I was going to bring up. Going back to the blueprint, the section on resources and supports for students. I've been advocating for school mental health services for decades. I know even before my kids were at MCPS, and now they've all graduated. So I wanted to know, understanding they were finally MCPS was doing some great things with expanding their community connections, and the Office of Student Wellbeing, I believe, finally was hiring school social workers and getting them integrated. I understand the ESSER cliff. I understand the pending federal situation, but I believe there was already cuts intended for those programs and those staff already.
No, we didn't do that.
And I know I've also been wanting to get Medicaid to reimburse for health and behavioral health services, and Maryland was finally moving on that. But I've been unclear on where NCPS is in the process, and what is your plan to continue, hopefully, that expansion of student health and mental health services?
Yeah, without question, we actually have the most robust student mental health services in the state, and probably in the Mid-Atlantic in terms of the infrastructure that we have. And I give a lot of credit to the work that's been done over the last couple of years, and really the things that have been put in place in response to the pandemic because of how robust it is. I really will say this, I'm scared to death that it's not sustainable. Because of the large carrying cost and how distant it is from the core business model of the school system, which is the teaching and learning aspect. So, because I mean, we are entering a period here, and we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about this. Is a tough budget year. This pales in comparison to what next year is going to look like. Okay, and so. Just even having this conversation gives me a little bit of heartburn, and it should give everybody else some heartburn, because we may be in a position where we have a hyper-localized economic impact in the form of a recession, but it may be even hyperly localized to Montgomery County, to the state of Maryland, just because of the impact to the federal workforce, just because of the impact to the Maryland economy specifically, and to the Montgomery County economy specifically, that as lean as things may be, they could and are likely to get a lot leaner. And when we are in that place, the kind of decisions that we are going to be forced to make have to do with what do you have to do, what are you legally required to do, what would you like to do, what would you should do, and to start categorizing some of those things. And they may be some really unfriendly choices that we're confronted with. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm just saying that a lot of that infrastructure is preserved right now, but unless some things change, and unless some decision making is at other levels is really significantly modified, we're in for a really rough go of things. Now, I will say nobody is more thrilled than me to have some Medicaid expansion in terms of reimbursements, because it actually does help our bottom line. It helps keep things sustainable. And some of the things that you are celebrating are things that really do help our kids and our families, and connecting them to resources. And when we can make them sustainable with a financial model, it helps. But if we can't, I mean, we're close. Yeah. It's scary. And the only people who are going to suffer are the kids, really.
I would just add briefly that every school I go to, and I've visited hundreds of them over the years and have 4 kids in the school system, mental health and social emotional well-being is at the top of the list of every student, every parent that you talk to. It comes up in every conversation. So the question is not, is there need? The question is, how do we meet the need? And that's really a community question, in my view. We're going to have to decide whether it's MCPS delivering it in the model that we have, or it's Health and Human Services, and there's already a partnership
coordinated
there.
Supports, correct.
Yeah, coordinated supports. There's some financial reasons to maybe do more on the HHS side, because you don't have to deal with state maintenance of effort on the school system. But from my perspective, and I think for many of my colleagues, it's not a matter of if it's needed. It's how do we scale it up and not have a dramatic rollback at a time where the stress and the pressures are just more and more. So I also share Dr. Taylor's concerns, but from my view is we as a community are going to have to figure out how to do this and not have it roll back. And that might mean we have to have how much are we willing to support our school, our HHS, or what are we willing to do to make sure our kids and their families have what they need from that standpoint. So it's a big conversation, but thank you.
Thank you. And with the conversation about Medicaid, where is MCPS on this process? I'm waiting for Maryland, getting...
I know that we are trying to reimburse for every dollar that we are allowed to. I think that that's our plan right now. How we're fulfilling that, I don't know. But
specifically, the most recent changes with behavioral health and school psychological services.
I don't know where we are with that right now.
Have to be a follow-up, but a lot of staff are here, so we will make sure we get you an answer to that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mike Chen, MCPS parent. I have a son at Quince Orchard High School, and I'm here to advocate for continuing to offer AP language, especially AP French at Quince Orchard. So my son and 18 others signed up earlier this year for French 5 AP French, and expect to take it next year and the year after. And then around late February, we found out that Quince Orchard is not going to offer French 5 AP French, and that's because the class size required went from 14 kids to 21 kids. French 5 AP French has been offered at Quince Orchard for several years now, so there's an increase in class size. They're at 18 or 19. They're not that far off. These kids have been taking French in 7th grade, and they've planned their schedules, and then to now just pull the rug out from under them really is unfair. You're kind of cutting back on, and so then we did communicate and told that that's a local school decision. So I checked with Principal Evans at Quince Orchard. He said that what's going on there is that they must have cut down on some of the lower level French teachers, and so the current French 5 AP French teacher, if she were to teach French 5 AP French, that would be above her number of classes. So I think the ask here is probably one teacher for one class at the lower level, so the current French 5 AP French teacher can teach the French 5 AP French and fulfill our obligation to these kids. Even just a couple years ago, a Quince Orchard graduate, Paisley, she's actually living and teaching in France right now. And I talked to her mom. Mom says that this opportunity to do that would not be possible without French 5 AP French and Madame Yu, the French teacher there. The MCPS, the mission statement on your webpage is expand opportunities and unleash potential. If you cut French 5, AP French, you're restricting opportunities and potentially cutting down on the potential, the potential for these kids. So the ask is really trying to, fund, AP French. One period, one class of AP French can be offered at Quince Orchard, and if there's other schools across Montgomery County, certainly that either from the budget or if not, then from some kind of public-private, partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And do you?
Yeah, I have to look into it, but thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth McKinney de Burgos, and I have 9-year-old twins. I have one on the spectrum. And my question is, or statement combination of question is, today is the beginning of Autism Awareness Month. Tomorrow's World Autism Day. In 2017, when my son was 2, 1 in 68 was diagnosed with autism. Today, the rate is 1 in 36. How are autistic students going to be set up for success? What provisions are in place to support autistic students transitioning between grade levels or to post-secondary education and employment? And how will the needs be met for this community? And I advocate for my son, Christian Burgos.
Thank you.
You so much.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Glad you're in the fight with us because it needs wholesale revision, not just a Band-Aid approach. What we need to do, and hopefully you saw this reflected, not just in the number of positions that we're hoping to add to meet this need, but also you saw the growing percentage of students with disabilities, and that's definitely reflective of that number, and it's only going in one direction. It's only going to increase. We need to build this out to be a lot more successful. I'm very worried about transition services and making sure that our kids have kind of some tools for life in terms of being prepared for life after school with us. I don't know that we have a good game plan right now. I'd love to stay in touch and talk some more about it, because I don't think we've got a good game plan. I think we're playing from behind, and I think we are way behind in terms of meeting the present need as well as what the future need is. And if anything, I expect the future need to be way more significant and way more amplified in terms of the different things that we'll need to provide for our students. One thing that I think you're kind of hinting around the margins, which I think is really important, is that our autistic students or students on the spectrum are not a monolith. Meaning that they are not all one type of need, one type of service, or one type of approach, but this huge range of approaches and services that they need. And so it's not one autism classroom or one service that's going to come in and save the day, but it's really like a portfolio of classes and a portfolio of supports that need to be put in place to meet both academic, cognitive, behavioral, social, all of the developmental strands that are going to help your son and help the next generation of kids that are coming behind him, which candidly are going to need a lot more support than what your son needs. Thank you.
And I appreciate you advocating for Christian. And I have a 12-year-old daughter, Addison, who's on the spectrum in MCPS. So I understand the passion that you're speaking from. And I will just say the urgency, one of the reasons I'm fighting so hard for this budget is because it will make a big difference, as you heard from the paraeducators who support some of the special education programs, in just trying to catch up. It's not where we need to be.
No.
But I think it will show a big commitment of that we need to rapidly head in a better direction. So as Dr. Taylor said, please be in touch with me and the system about ideas you have, because this is going to be these numbers aren't going down, they're going up, and we're going to have to figure it out and do better. So thank you.
And I guess Montgomery College is
the transition.
for that as well,
Yeah.
in transitions.
Sure. So when we say students at Montgomery College, we mean all students, right? And we think about the beautiful diversity of the students that we serve, which represent this county. So when we're talking about teaching in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and support both inside the classroom and outside the classroom, that is data-informed, it's student-centered. So when we look at our pedagogy, we are educating and training our faculty and staff to be able to support all of our students. We know that there's always work to do. There's always learning and growing, but that is what we endeavor to do, is to ensure that all of our students receive the equitable support both inside and outside the classroom that they need in order to thrive.
Thank you all for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, you can bring it down if you need to.
You're so kind.
There you go.
Good evening. My name is Anita Neal Powell. I live in Rockville. I'm a Montgomery College alum and active member of the Montgomery College Alumni Association, currently volunteer as its first vice president. I am joined tonight by several other Montgomery College alum. After attending MC, I went on to earn my degree of public administration from the University of the District of Columbia. I am retired from the federal government. Lastly, I'm the president and CEO of the Lincoln Park Historical Foundation. Thank you, Councilmember Jawando, for your ongoing support of MC. As an alum who knows the power of an MC education, I simply want to thank you and ask for your continued support so Montgomery College can continue to keep tuition affordable. Affordable tuition is important so that more residents can access the post-secondary education they need. Thank you again, and good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, good evening. I am Dorothy Bell. I am the daughter of Dr. Gregory Bell. He's an administrator here with MCPS. I just want to make a comment. I thank you all for this forum. Dad sent me the link to the forum last week of my alum, Springbrook High School. I'm celebrating 20 years this year.
All right.
And so I want to say that as a product of Montgomery County Public Schools, I definitely can co-sign what they are talking about in terms of the budget and what aspirations a student can build, with the curriculum that they provide. I am a product of Howard University as well as Bowie State University, and I work for the Department of Education, and they are doing what they can do right now as we speak to make sure that the programs that can sustain themselves under this administration. So with that being said, this is a difficult conversation. I know budget is is not going down, it is going up. So the expectation is have more of these forums, have more transparency like you've established here. I think that the connection with the community college as well as the county council is great. And I want to just say on behalf of the Northeast Consortium, class of 2005, we are here to advocate for whatever we can do to support in the gap, because I do think that as alum, we do have that responsibility to come back and support the community. So whatever we can do, we're here to support. Thank you.
Thank you. And happy anniversary. All right, well, we are over time, but I'm glad we were able to get to as many questions as possible. If you didn't sign in, please sign in. There's information to my office. If you have a pothole or if you have a budget question, you can send it to us, and we will try to get back to you. So please, if there's still opportunities to sign up for the council budget hearings, if you want to advocate for specific funding for anything, including MCPS, and we will start those next week. And thank you all for coming out, and thank you, Dr. Taylor, and thank you, Dr. Williams. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.